actually, I say running a half marathon in your training is a hard pass. Don't do it. But before we do that, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Running with arthritis without the knee pain is possible, and it only takes a few simple steps. So go ahead and subscribe so you can know exactly what to do to run without knee pain. Shouldn't I run more than 10 miles if I'm training for a half marathon? Feeling overwhelmed about not having enough time to run a half marathon for your half marathon? Don't worry. You don't have to run a half marathon to run a half marathon. And actually, I say running a half marathon in your training is a hard pass. Don't do it. Just don't. You don't need and actually shouldn't run too much when training for a half marathon. Your body needs some rest to not overdo it in preparation for your race. So what distance should you run instead? A half marathon is 13.1 miles, so you should run 10 miles as your longest. That's plenty of miles to get you prepared. You only need to run 10 miles because when you train right, you'll still be on your feet the same amount of time. It's not about the mileage. It's about the amount of time on your feet. When you're training your long runs, they should be much slower than race pace. When training for races, your long run needs to be slower than how fast you run your race. They should be 20 to 30% slower than your race pace. So let's look at that 10-mile long training run. 10 miles is about 30% shorter than a half marathon. And if you're running it 30% slower, that means you'll be running for the same amount of time that you'd run the half marathon. So there's no need to run 13.1 miles in training. Want an example? Your race pace is 10 minutes per mile. 30% slower is 13 minutes per mile. So race day total time at a 10 minutes per mile pace times 13.1 miles is 131 minutes, or 2 hours and 11 minutes. Your long run, 10 miles total time at a 13 minutes per mile times 10 miles is 130 minutes of running, 2 hours and 10 minutes. See? You'd be running for the same amount of time. So don't fret if you don't have the time to run a half marathon before your half marathon. You shouldn't be running that for the race anyway. Save it for race day. Run slower. So you run 30% less and 30% slower to add up to the same amount of time on your feet for race day. Many people will say, but I need to know I can do the miles. Really, it's about the time it takes to do the miles. If you're doing the miles slower, you're still on your feet for the same amount of time. So your body knows it can do it. If you overtrain, you risk having an injury and not even being able to complete the half marathon. So make sure your longest runs are slow and steady, and the longest run of your training plan is 30% less than race day distance and 30% slower to make sure that you're still running the same amount of time. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit that bell so you're notified every time a new video comes up so that you can run without knee pain.